Unia, the 17th century KC. In the twilight years of a feudal era, firearms arose to change warfare forever, a stage of history set for inexorable catastrophe. In the westlands of Unia, there is a kingdom born not of divinity, but of defiance. It was once a homeland to Cardians, whose ancient glory declined until the Musan Empire swallowed them. Thus, the largest nation ever known enjoyed its apex, a time when tribute flowed like golden rivers across long tracts to the Emperor's throne. The frontiersmen and native remnants of the Westlands, now but a remote territory, forged a new culture over the ruins of old Cardia. They grew to favor ingenuity over labor and loyalty over fealty. The Emperor was no one to them. In 1340, the Cardian philosopher Cal Pallas petitioned his fellow Westlanders to sever ties with the Empire, and a separatist movement soon swelled. It fell to the imperial vicereine Lyra du Sol to put down the uprising, but instead she turned coat and sent an ultimatum to her emperor: sovereignty or war. It was a call to arms for the Westlands. Attack was imminent. At one renegade colonel's command, countless soldiers defected to the separatist cause and prepared to repel the impending attack. That colonel's name was Armarosk. Armarosk was born a commoner of mixed heritage. Orphaned as a teen, he joined the Musan army. He proved apt to military matters and earned rank in due course, but he served with pale ardor, for he disdained the corruption beyond his station. Thus, when the time arose, he seized upon the separatist cause unwavering. Within the first weeks of the rebellion, his initiative scored key early victories, and he swiftly earned the rank of general. Furthermore, his indomitable presence was a constant source of morale to the soldiers under his command, for he shared their dream of a new sovereignty in the Westlands. He was known to reward acts of courage with field promotions to knighthood, an authority he strictly did not possess. The fiercest fighting of the war occurred in the Solrothi Peaks, where Rosk took advantage of the mountainous terrain. There, no siege could dislodge his position, and his ambushers lied in wait at every turn. In the end, the Empire's war effort proved too great an expenditure to sustain. In 1345, Lady Lyra du Sol sued for peace. The Emperor accepted. New borders formed, and the aftermath brokered power in the Westlands. To the south, Lady du Sol declared herself Archduchess of a new aristocracy of Dusolia, and Cal Pallas freed his ancestral lands of Palazea to the northwest. Meanwhile, in the northeast, Armarosk retained power through his loyal knights and militia. He styled himself the Lord Protector of a confederation, but his popularity outstripped his own ambition as the commoners heaped heroic praise upon him. An elected delegation coronated King Arma I in 1351, and so the Kingdom of Roska was born. Geographically, Roska is composed of three regions. First and northmost, the Misty Coast, where frigid Idrissili winds chill the air, and modest fishermen fleets make birth, a quiet backwater of maritime tradition and retired soldiers. Secondly, the hill boroughs, breadbasket for much of the Westlands, a landscape of livestock pastures, stepped grain paddies, and hash-crossed with canals. Thirdly, and most distinctly, the Solrothi Peaks, with its jagged spires, craters, and fissures, a harrowing terrain which the Roskans learned to master just as the Cardian Solrothi tribe before them. Roska's capital city is situated in a valley less than a day's travel from the eastern border, where there stands an insurmountable cliff face from coast to coast like a wall. Surmised to have been built by the Lorna Titan Solroth himself, Solroth's Ridge was an obstacle to the history of mankind, whether in peace or war. For Roska's reign, it was a welcome barrier against an old enemy, fortified wherever traversable with garrisoned fortresses. For this, Roska is known as the Bulwark Kingdom in many tongues. The national banner standard is crimson for homeland soil and the blood of the fallen, and gold for the royal family. The Roskans are by tradition a highly martial people, whose firstborn sons are obligated to serve in the army. As a result, Roska's army is the largest in Unia on a per capita basis, but still dwarfed in sheer numbers by the Muson Imperial Army. Enmity and distrust endured between the young kingdom and its fatherland empire throughout the 14th and 15th centuries, a period of grudging coexistence pockmarked by minor wars. Bloodshed escalated during the Reconquest Wars of the early 16th century, the empire's vain bid to recover its former glory. A new weapon saw its dawn in those conflicts, the musket, a Dusolian invention which they proliferated through trade. However, Roska possessed neither the capital nor the clout to import them in great numbers, not even from their Dusolian neighbors. Roska endured by traditional means of warfare alone, and incurred casualties to their disadvantage. However, their superior terrain and morale won out in the end. The Imperial Army, exhausted, laid down arms in 1524, while the gun remained unready to truly dominate the battlefield. Most still fell by the spade or blade. Next there came an uneasy peace, suspicious in its persistence for over 100 years. Roska recovered from the Reconquest but learned the wrong lessons as consequence. The kingdom adopted a hardline stance against guns on principle, decrying them as dishonorable. They even leveraged the Dusolians to cease all exportation of military firearms. Dusolia begrudgingly complied, but the sanction symbolized a growing rift. Roska and Dusolia had become like bitter neighbors, a friendship frayed by many slights over time. In the years leading to 1653, Roska stood conflicted, a nation that revered its military yet abhorred the inevitable gun, where to possess one was prohibited yet sharp arms lay ready in every household, where any man would answer the call against the empire but feared an old ally may become the next enemy. Complacent minds failed to recognize Roska's existential risk. Their impotent bid to rein back inexorable advancement exposed a mortal weakness for whoever might exploit it. On a mid-spring afternoon, the men and women of Roska busied about their kingdom's vast farmland, from plowed fields and ready soil to ripe fruits and fat roots. Water pumped uphill soaked the grain paddies below. Among the livestock, scaly biped raptors raced one another up and down their long corrals to prove themselves worthy mounts. Lightless flocks of poultry cues hooted and pecked their scattered feed. The ground subtly trembled under the great three-toed feet of hulking restors, bred for burden, leather, and meat. Soranold's restor pasture stretched out from one corner of the village, where stood a father with his 10-year-old son. Both were Hillborough men through and through, from dusty legs to sweaty tunics and sun-paled hair. The wiry boy held a hatchet over a chopping block. His old man stood beside and instructed him.
Focus, steady, and go.
The boy focused and steadied his arms, then brought the axe straight down and clove the firewood clean in two. The son looked to his father with a timid smirk in search of approval.
Good, Rogan. What did I tell you? Focus, steady, and go,
said the old man as he patted his boy's shoulders. Rogan started wryly. Yeah, Dad. Now, about that reward you mentioned.
Reward? Huh. What else but a warm hearth and hot food?
The revelation only deflated the boy. He should have expected such a bait-and-switch by now.
And you get to do this all the time from now on.
Rogan looked hesitantly at the nearby pile of sectioned logs. But Dad, if I take over all your chores, then you won't stay the strongest man in Soranold for much longer. His father scoffed.
Psh, I haven't been the strongest man in the village for years. Besides, what good's a man who can't split his own timber? Now get after it, as much as you can, then pile it over by the cabin.
He patted Rogan again, and then set off to see to the Restor herd grazing in the wide meadow. Without further complaint, Rogan put himself to the task. Not every swing was true, except true in effort, no matter how many times he missed. He would remember his father's lesson. Focus, steady, go, and he swung again. From mid-afternoon to early evening, Naya the sun traced her path through the sky and soon touched the treetops of Rentea, the giant forest on the western horizon. Rogan stacked one last load of firewood beside the cabin and realized the soreness throughout his arms all at once. He could hardly lift his hands to wipe away the sweat pouring from his forehead and wetting his tunic throughout. He searched for his father, inside the cabin and out in the pasture, and saw no one. But the old man's absence revealed his whereabouts to Rogan, familiar with his dad's habits. He strolled from the cabin down through Soranold village, quieting down from a hard day's work. He passed by the family cabins, the animal barns, and the grain silos. At the market, the mongers finished packing up their wares. At the public house, the locals began to drink and sing. Rogan waved to the mayor as he locked up the magistrate's hall. He gave a palm-up salute to the local soldiers at the watchtower, who smiled and saluted right back. He gave a silent prayer as he passed the ancient Lorndor shrine, built millennia ago in tribute to the Titan who once called the Hillboroughs home. Lastly, he arrived to the burial grounds. There, Rogan found his father sat behind a familiar grave, inscribed Rona Tice. Still, 10 years on, his old man mourned a wife, a mother Rogan never knew. Dad...
Oh, Rogan, help me up, will ya? My knees aren't what they used to be.
He used his son as a crutch to return to his feet, and then the two started a familiar slow stroll back home.
You remember what happens tomorrow, don't ya?
How could I forget? King Oz is coming tomorrow.
Of course, remember who else?
Rogel! Rogan smiled and skipped excitedly. His father proudly replied,
That's Lieutenant Sir Rogel Tice of the Rux Knights to the likes of you. I bet you can't wait to see your brother in shining armor again.
It's been so long. Do you think he'll let me hold his lance this time?
I'm sure he will, Rogan. Not to mention His Highness hasn't toured out to Soranold since you were a baby. It'll be a right sight for you, too.
When the pair arrived at their cabin, Rogan's father took a sharp whiff and said,
You reek, boy. Go wash up and get back before dark. I'll have some good gruel on soon.
Yes, sir. Rogan took off across the pasture, his legs less exhausted than his arms. His favorite Restor sow trilled when Rogan ran by, baying for affection. Sorry, not now, girl, he cried, and kept on toward the irrigation stream that marked the edge of his father's stead. He took a dunk at his favorite spot, where the water ran over a small dam into a pool before flowing onward. Rogan basked in the cool water, floated face up, eyes closed, and when he opened them again, he noticed the scarlet light of sunset had given way to twilight indigo, and the 3 moons' glow brightened the northern sky. He got out of the pool, wrung his tunic, shook out his hair, and set back across the field toward home. He paused only once to pet the Restor sow from before, who hugged close a clutch of 4 huge eggs, each the size of Rogan himself, and barely warm against the spring night's chill. Another restor, the buck who fathered the eggs, approached with a low growl and sharp stare, and lashed Rogan with his long tongue. Hey, easy, big fella, it's just me. But the massive animal's instinct heard no reason, and shooed Rogan on his way. Once inside the cabin, Rogan found his father at work over millis gruel and grilled steak strips. Rogan sat himself before the fireplace to warm and dry himself. That sow's clutch is about to hatch, I think.
Yeah, I give it to tomorrow or the next day, said his father. And that buck has been getting ornery, I tell you. I swear he almost trampled me earlier. You'd think he'd recognize his own herder, that fool.
He dished the herb, millis, and steak out into 2 wooden bowls and handed one to his son.
Thanks for the wood today. It's, what's burning now.
You're welcome, Dad, said Rogan.
Now remember, if you like hot food and warm bones, then you'd better keep up the good work.
Rogan nodded. Yes, sir. Focus, steady, go, he said as he dug into his supper. The 2 ate by the flicker and crackle, and perked to the tune of distant orlofs owling at the moons. Meanwhile, several miles north of Sorenold. At the roadside there stood an outpost, the like which dotted the Roscan countryside. Its humble hall and stout tower appeared in moonlight silhouette, and lanterns illuminated its 6-man garrison, at attention in waiting. The royal grand carriage approached them, rumbling as it rolled, no less than a house on wheels, drawn by 2 fit restor bucks arrayed in line. The immense vehicle rolled on 3 steel axles and 6 solid wheels, white painted, carved and worked from finest timber, and every metal fitting mirror smooth under a coat of dust. King Ozza's broad banner streamed above, visible even in the dimness, a golden 8-legged crider against a scarlet sea. Its escort of 20 Rux knights on Repterback were among the kingdom's most elite guardsmen, their armor sheening silver like the great moon for which their order was named. Once stopped, the double doorway on the side of the carriage opened, and a small set of stairs flipped down to the gravelly ground. Out marched a military man, straight and serious. He bore rare Cardian ethnic traits, his short hair and narrow irises both as navy as the sea. His raiment, crimson trim and gilded crest, signified his rank of general, royal guardian, commander of the Rox Knights. His name was Rulfo Sordis. 5 enlisted men and 1 Ven Knight greeted General Sordis before their outpost, itself paled by the arrived carriage.
Who's the commander here?
Asked the general.
That would be me, Lieutenant Lin at your command, General Sordis,
said the leader, saluting palm up.
Should we expect to receive His Highness tonight?
Travel has wearied His Highness. I'm given leave to conduct his business in his stead. But I'm not as patient as he, so I will cut straight to it. Have you and your men been lax in your searches of northbound travelers?
The lieutenant replied, No, sir. Every traveler comes through here is inspected, and every tradesman searched, doubly so for Desolians.
As I should expect, Lieutenant. Take note. Smugglers have been getting more and more creative. Be wary of wagons especially. Contraband guns have been found under false boards, strapped to axles and so forth. His Highness likes nothing less than dishonorable weapons within his borders, and Dusolia is less our ally all the time.
Is that why His Highness tours so far south this year, sir?
The knight saw his superior's scowl.
If I might presume, sir.
It's not your business to presume, Lieutenant, said General Sordis. Now, I trust you have space to lodge my men and stabling for their mounts?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Squads 1 and 3, you'll be lodged tonight. Squads 2 and 4, you're on watch.
And Lieutenant Tice.
Wait, where's Lieutenant Tice? Within the main parlor of the grand carriage, thick-armored Sir Rogel Tice sat at a table across from a girl in a nightgown, 8 years old with night-black hair and amber eyes. Although her bedtime approached, she spared her excess energy to play a board game with her favorite knight.
So, Rogel, are you attacking or defending?
You decide, Highness.
Okay. I'll defend, you attack.
If you insist, princess,
said the knight, and he picked his wooden game pieces from a selection.
Remember, Princess Feylin, when you're on the defensive, you can't just rush in every time, or else I'll clobber you on the counterattack.
Aw, but that's no fun.
General Sordus re-entered the parlor from outside.
Did I grant you leave, Lieutenant Tice?
Apologies, General. Her Highness invited me inside for a game of Peril.
Mr. Sordus, please let him stay just for one game. Rogel's a lot more fun to play against than you.
Peril is not about fun, Princess. It is about winning. You will learn nothing of the game if you don't think tactically.
The General observed the placement of her pieces and said,
They may stand for real men someday.
The game pieces? They're my favorite part,
said Feylin, admiring their finely carven designs, unique to each one's role and rules. The General's implication was beyond her understanding. He looked to his lieutenant and commanded, One game, as Her Highness pleases. No more, and that's an order, Sir Tice.
Yes, General, sir,
Rogel replied, and General Sordus went to climb the tightly wound spiral staircase up to the bed cabins to retire for the evening.
Alright, now that he's out of our hair.
Feylin giggled at Rogel's remark.
Let's see. Attackers move first.
He moved his pieces forward in an arranged fashion.
Seriously? Are you letting me win? Your pieces are right in reach of mine.
Oh, I hadn't noticed.
Yeah, right.
One by one, Pheylin's pieces attacked Rogel's with imaginary payloads, and she flicked them off the board to her delight.
Oh no, I've bungled,
said Rogel with feigned distress. He took his turn to regroup his survivors for a counteroffensive.
Why are you going so easy on me?
Maybe if I let you win once in a while, you'll learn how to win for real next time.
Fair enough,
said Feylin, and she walled her pieces across the center line.
Ha! What you gonna do about that, huh, Sir Tice?
I'm gonna stop going easy on you, that's what.
Rogel enacted an obscure maneuver from his formation and pierced through Pheylin's defenses in a single turn.
What? Forgot you could do that. Okay, my turn.
Are you sure?
Of course. What do you...
Rogel still had one piece left to move, and just in reach of her throne space. So soon as she noticed, she hissed,
"Ah, Sir Rogel!"
And you thought I was gonna let you win, but you're toast now. Respectfully, of course, Your Highness.
Did you forget the point of playing defense?
Asked the knight. Always watch the throne space.
Oh well, I still like the pretty pieces,
she said, and forfeited the game. But when you play the attacker, you forget to focus on taking it. That's what makes you so easy to play in Peril. You only think about the pieces and not the objective. She huffed at his critique.
Don't worry, though. You'll get it someday.
Wait, let's reset the board. Just one more game. I want to try something else.
Another time, Princess. I told General Sordus I would only play for one, and it's getting late.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Hey, tomorrow's the day we visit your hometown, right?
Yeah, it is. I can't wait to see my family. I'd ride ahead for them now if I had to leave. I got a little brother, you know.
An old handmaiden in a dressing gown appeared from the top of the spiral staircase.
Princess Feylin, please, it is quite time for you to retire.
Yes, ma'am. I'm just gonna say goodnight to Sir Tice and I'll be right up.
Very well, Highness. Meet me in a moment, I'll tuck you in,
said the handmaiden, and she retraced back to the upper cabins.
Are you sleeping outdoors again?
No, I believe some lodging has been arranged for us tonight.
That's good. Sleep tight, Sir Tice.
She hugged Rogel's armored corpus, so broad that her arms could not reach around him. As though her embrace caused him some discomfort, he said,
Now, Highness, there's no need to spare such manners for your guardsmen.
I can't help it, Rogel. You're my favorite.
Flattery will get you nowhere with me, Princess. Good night, Your Highness.
Good night, Sir Tice,
said Feylin, as she dashed up the spiral stairs to bed. And Sir Rogel Tice exited the carriage to join his fellow knights for a simple supper within the roadside outpost. Rogan awoke to a nearing siren of brass that heralded the arrival of the king and his retinue. He sprung to his feet. Excitement rushed through his little frame, for he knew he'd soon see his long-missed brother. He rushed to his finest linen shirt and slacks, already laid out for him by his father,
who said, "Remember, Rogan, His Highness already knows we're country bumpkins, so there's no need to act like it. Understood?"
"Yes, Dad," he replied while he buckled his nicest shoes. "Go have a look. Can you see Rogel out there yet?"
"Take your time. They're still a way back up the road."
They had a hasty breakfast, cold millet porridge and a piece of fruit each, and finished making themselves presentable for the village's honored guest. They turned out their cabin door to the village, where citizens and denizens all lined the main road. Sire and son Tice joined the throng to witness high-bred restors pull the royal grand carriage up to the magistrate's hall. Rogan had never seen a bigger coach on wheels. The mounted escort of Rock's knights flanked around it, their visored helms and thick armor shining white silver in the sun. Rogan, forgetting the propriety he was bidden to show, looked to the knights and cried, "Rogel, where are you?" Mr. Tice clapped his hand over his son's mouth. One of the Rock's knights, steel lance in hand, dismounted from his reptor. With calm collection, he marched toward the two Tices, cold and silent. A wizened voice from within the royal carriage gave forth,
"Go ahead and greet your family, Sir Tice."
The knight lifted his visor to reveal just what Rogan and his father expected. The face of Tice's elder son, unmistakable, save for a thickening beard. Jovial and smiling wide, he cried, "Father, little rogue!" And the three-man family embraced together at once, their loving exclamations warming every family around. Rogel jocularly commanded his little brother, "Come on, village boy, and relieve this knight of his armament." And he held out his great long lance. Rogan, awestruck by the mighty weapon, took it in hand, careful and exulting. He gazed up at the sharp spear tip high overhead. The boy struggled just to keep it upright, and was so overwhelmed by its splendor that he didn't notice when the carriage's side doorway finally opened. First stepped out General Sordis, recognized as much for his closeness to the king as for his rarefied ethnic traits. Always in search of things amiss, he acquired the sight of a child with a weapon in hand. The general's ocean blue stare took Rogan aback, and he dropped the lance in shock. His dutiful brother caught it back promptly. Sir Sordis turned his gaze to the rest of the villagers, scanned for further suspicions, and satisfied, he finally spoke, loud and clear for all to hear. "All subjects of Roska, be still and behold His Highness, Aza, King of Roska!" Everyone bowed their heads, and many knelt, including the weary-kneed Mr. Tice, and Rogan followed his father's example. Sir Rogel stood at attention as the king stepped out into the morning sun, draped in royal finery of velvet and violet, a jeweled sword sheathed at his hip, and the red-golden crown upon a head of graying black hair. The king approached the Tice family, and the same wizened voice spoke as from before. "You must be the lieutenant's father, Master Tice, I take?" "Yes, your highness. Argel Tice at your service. Rogel is the elder of my two sons." "You will be proud to know that your son serves his king and kingdom as well as any knight in all the 6 orders. In this way, you've given your country a great gift." "I am deeply grateful for you to say so, your highness." "You may rise, Mr. Tice, and all in Sorrenold may rise too. I know well enough the loyalty of the Hillborough folk." Slowly the village rose to their feet. Rogan helped his father up, knowing his weakness. "And you must be the younger brother of Sir Tice, am I correct?" Rogan hardly believed that His Highness addressed him, and it took Rogel's egging for a reply. Yes, your highness. I'm Rogan. I have heard your brother speak well of you. Young master, if you serve your kingdom half as well as your brother does, then I may have a task for you. Would you mind playing host for a guest your own age? Just for the day, if it won't trouble you." The king gestured to the third person to emerge from the carriage. The girl seemed as ordinary as most, except for her royal decorum. She wore an all-white silken gown, the sheening fabric a new sight to Rogan's eyes. Her night dark locks terminated in slightest curls, and her bright golden amber eyes peered from a curious expression, framed by a gold necklace and silver circlet. The king gestured her over to where Rogan stood, and she obeyed with folded hands. "Young Master Tice, this is my daughter.
I'd like if you could do me the favor of keeping her company for the day. Teach her a thing or two about the farmer's lifestyle. Can you do that for me?
Sure. I mean, yes, Your Highness, stuttered Rogan, although in truth he rather wouldn't. Whatever you want. The girl spoke.
Hi, I'm Feylin. What's your name? Rogan, Your Highness.
She giggled a little at Rogan's apparent nervousness, but she seemed accustomed to these kinds of greetings.
I won't make you call me Highness, just call me Feylin. But I will make you do this.
She held out her hand to Rogan, gently, with a playful grin. He took her hand and shook it in the manner he was taught, perhaps a little too firm.
Ow! Ow!
Rogel smacked his skull with his gauntleted hand.
You're supposed to get it!
His brother hissed. Rogan hesitated and obliged with a quick peck on the ring on her finger. Feylin giggled again, and a number of the villagers couldn't help but chuckle themselves. She said,
Don't worry, Rogan, I'm done teasing you. Maybe.
Rogan couldn't help but stand embarrassed and speechless.
Well, come on, aren't you gonna show me around?
Oh, well, of course, Your Highness, or Feylin.
Come on, I'll show you our house first, although it's not much to see.
Rogan led Feylin away as Rogel and their father shared a glance.
Well, can't you believe that, son?
Well, there's a chance I may have sort of put His Highness up to the idea. You know, it might teach Rogue how to talk to girls. Argel had to smirk at his elder son's guile. Meanwhile, King Ozza shared a quiet word with General Sordis. I want you to keep watch on Feylin and the boy. I don't suspect anything, but just to be safe. Sir Sordis bowed his head and turned away to follow Feylin and Rogan. And General, please keep your distance. Let her enjoy the day. I don't want a repeat of that incident in Aldatown. Understood, Your Highness.
Well, this is it. Like I said, it's not a lot to see. That's our grazing field behind the fence, and oh, and the chopping block over there is where I cut the firewood. Oh. This is a restore ranch, isn't it? Your brother told me about it once. It's a small one. My dad keeps around 20 head at a time, breeds them, and sells them when their breeding days are done. Or when they're meaty enough. And what happens to them when they're sold?
But Feylin needed no explication.
Oh, I see. Well, that's just the way it is, I guess. It's okay, I'm sure you make it good for him while it lasts.
She leaned on the fence, rested her head on folded arms, and looked out to the herd of grazing beasts.
Hey, Rogan, do you have any clothes I could borrow?
Clothes? What do you need my clothes for? So my gown won't get dirty in the fields, of course. A little while ago, we were in Aldatown, you see, and I played hockey ball with some of the big girls there, and oof, my handmaid got steaming mad because how filthy my gown got, and sort of scolded those girls so bad. I felt bad about it, really. So, are you gonna lend me some clothes, or aren't you? The princess seemed insistent.
Oh, of course. I mean, they might be a bit big on you, but we'll see.
He led her inside, and she looked around the humble house and twirled her black curls while Rogan rifled around his small bedroom for something halfway suitable for a princess to wear. He settled on his second finest shirt and slacks, and presented them to her.
Thank you, Rogan. These'll do. Can I use your room to change?
Yes, there are belts if you want one. As if enough unbelievable things hadn't occurred that day, the crown princess of Roska then disrobed in his own bedroom.
And no peeking, or else Mr. Sordis will have your head.
Rogan averted his eyes to the window and jumped at the scowling stare of General Sordis peering in straight at him.
Why would I ever peek?
The boy uttered, yet years away from such urges.
I'm gonna keep my gown and jewelry and things in here, okay? Whatever you want.
When she finally emerged, she appeared far less princessy as before, but somehow more familiar and easier company to share.
How do I look?
Rogan minced his answer.
You almost look like a boy, except...
Prettier is what he almost said.
Prettier?
She finished for him, with a jesting narrow gaze.
What? Huh. Ooh, weren't you just the funniest boy?
With a glance back to the window, Rogan sighed, relieved that Sir Sordis had vanished. And then he noticed her bare feet and asked,
Feylin, what about your shoes? I might have a pair to fit you somewhere. No thanks. The grass is so soft in these parts, nothing like the hard gravel up in the peaks. Whatever you want. Rogan bent down to unbuckle his own shoes. If the Princess of Roska can go barefoot, then so will I. Besides, I hate those things. They exited out the cabin's back door into the field, where the rest stores grazed. Feylin pirouetted about and gazed with wonder at the wide green landscape all around. It's so wide open out here. The peaks are beautiful and all, but the sky here seems so huge. Rogan strolled over to the expectant sow from the night before, who kept her eyes fixed upon her clutch of eggs. He stroked her massive face. Hey, you're gonna be a mama soon, aren't ya? Aren't ya, big girl? He looked down to her clutch and noticed a crack formed from its occupant breaking free. He beckoned the princess over. Hey, Feylin, look at this. What is it, Rogan? Oh, I see it. This egg is about to hatch, isn't it? I give it no more than a minute. Just you watch. We're lucky to see this. The cracks widened and soon separated. Slowly, the great egg opened to reveal the hatchling inside, and its sow mother looked on with gentle care. A frail, tiny restorling, meek and cooing, so small compared to the beast who created it, although nearly the size of Feylin. Oh, they look so darling when they're babies, don't they? If you ask me, they start out ugly and get pretty later. Like this big mama right here. He stroked the sow's long, scaly face again, and she let out a purring hiss. Now we should get going. I don't want to be around when the new daddy drops by to check up. He's a grumpy fellow, that one. Rogan led Feylin onward further out into the field and talked while they strolled. I've heard your brother talk about you and your father. He's never mentioned your mother. He wouldn't have. She hasn't been around, you see. I've only heard it how my dad puts it. My mom was too old to have babies, so when I was born, well... Feylin understood without him saying any more. Oh, I see. Rogan, I'm so sorry, she said with precocious sympathy. She put her hand on his shoulder to console a grief unfelt. No, it's all right. I've never known any difference, so I don't miss her or anything. I just wish I knew her. And that's my lot in life. My dad remembers her, though. He's always sad around my birthday. Eastern 53rd. I'm turning 11 this year. So your birthday is just about a month away. I had my 10th just this past Enjorn on the 28th. Wait, that's Winter Spring Day, right? Yep. Cute, huh? They had arrived at the back of the property, where the stream revealed itself below a sloped embankment. The cool water flowed and glistened in the rising morning sun. Wow, you have a river right here on your property? I wish I had a river. Rogan chuckled, amused at this stately princess's amazement at his simple life. It's hardly a river, more of a canal. The rest stores drink from it, the farmers use it, folks bathe in it, launder their clothes, cook with it. My dad says never to drink straight from it, though. You gotta boil it first. At least it's right back here whenever you need it. It's a tough business getting water around the peaks. You wouldn't believe all the things people do for water up there. It all gives my father a headache, actually, she explained as they came to Rogan's favorite spot, where the water spilled over and pooled up. Rogan stood with his back against the pool, eyes shut tight. Rogan stood with his back against the pool, eyes shut tight and arms spread out wide. Watch this! And with a jump, he plummeted backwards right into the pool, and Feylin flinched at the splashback. Wetted and dismayed, she cried, What'd you do that for? For fun. What else? Rogan replied, floating in the water. Now it's your turn. Feylin hesitated. Oh, no. I think I should, well... What's the matter, princess? Afraid to get a little wet? Said Rogan, hurling a scoop of water from the pool straight at her, further drenching her borrowed clothes and hair. Cut it out! You're already wet now, what have you got to lose? No way under Naya, Rogan. You have to! Your father commanded me to show you what life is like out here. To disobey the king is a crime. Do you want me to be put to the sword? Feylin realized she really wanted to join him, but resisted all the same. I can't swim. Rogan stood straight up. The water level reached only his navel. Neither can I. Well, all right then, if you must insist. She lifted the hem of her pant leg and daintily dipped her toe in. Nope, you gotta do it my way. Really? She didn't know where Rogan's good manners had gone, but his brashness refreshed her spirits as much as the inviting cool water at her feet. Well, alright then. Slow and trembling, she turned her back to the water, shut her eyes, spread her arms out wide, but could not bring herself to make the final leap until Rogan cried, "Jump!" So she did, hopped off from the side of the stream and plunged into the water with a great splash. Rogan laughed as she kicked, flopped, and flailed. She soon found her footing on the soft sandy bottom. She stood, cleared her slickened hair from her face, panted, wide-eyed and shivering. She'd never been so thoroughly soaked in her life. That wasn't so bad, was it? And this is every day for you? Every day of my life. I can get used to it, she said with a smile. So they spent much of the morning, in and around the water. Feylin could not resist taking a few more plunges from the bank, and was pleased to float underneath the miniature waterfall, where she let the stream flow over her head and shoulders, made little waves with her arms, and felt the soft fine sand between her toes. Now and again the children broke the calm with breath-holding contests and ferocious splash wars. While the sun neared midday in the center of the sky, they exited the water and laid spread-eagled in the grass quietly as the sun dried them, and they forgot the rest of the world around them. Then Rogan felt a shadow pass between the sun and his closed eyes, and heard his brother's voice.
Well, well, I hope you haven't bored Her Highness to sleep.
Oh, Gil, it's you, said Rogan, his senses of time and place returning to him. Just for a moment there, I thought you were... General Sortis stood silent a short distance away.
I know exactly what you mean.
Sir Rogel, I wasn't asleep, just resting and drying off.
Oh, went for a swim, did you, Highness? And how was that?
Oh, I never wanted to get out. Your brother sure knows how to make fun around here.
Glad to hear it. I figured he would bring you somewhere like this. Although the pool seems a lot smaller than when I was a lad. Anyway, you've been invited to take your lunch with my family in the, humble house of Tice.
Oh yes, please, I've gotten so hungry.
Rogel told Rogan out the side of his mouth.
You should have seen the look on Dad's face when King Ozza told him we'd host royalty for lunch.
And Rogan chuckled at the thought of it. Rogel turned to Sortis.
General, sir, I would relieve you for the time being, if you'll allow.
Sir Sortis said in his hard voice. Very good, Lieutenant. You may relieve me from now until sundown. I will be with the king for now. There are matters on the afternoon docket that I would rather attend to than watch children frolic all day long, he added under breath.
Hold on now, did he watch us all morning long? Of course he did. You don't think I'd be allowed out of the sight of the Rax Knights, would you?
Rogel explained. No member of the royal family, not even a third cousin thrice removed, goes without a guard. That's what we Rax Knights are for, Rogue.
Did you just call him Rogue?
It's the only name I know him by, Highness.
Oh, that's precious. It suits him, said Feylin, to Rogan's embarrassment. Once inside, they saw Mr. Tice put the finishing touches on his specialty. Whole roasted Q, spiced slaw, diced sweet roots, and flatbread. He saw his sons enter with the princess and said, Welcome to our abode, Highness. Please make yourself Rogan, did you make the princess wear your clothes? He didn't make me, sir. I asked for him for a set, so I wouldn't dirty my nice dress.
Oh, well, all good then, said Mr. Tice, and continued his preparations. The princess redressed to her gown. Rogel unhelmed and sat himself at the table, and Rogan helped his father dish out the hearty country food. They even lit candles. Once all seated and served, Rogel struck the conversation. Say, Dad, you sat for the meeting between the king and the magistrate, right? How did that go? Well, it was a bit of a show. First, the king praised our high yields last harvest, which we were pleased to hear, but then he brought up the business about contraband guns and whatnot. Feylin paused from her meal to add, My father takes that so seriously. He's really mad at the Dusolians all the time about it. Oh, do you know much about the king's business? You bet. That's my job as a princess. But I'm still too young to learn everything. But you can tell us why the king gets so upset about Dusolian guns? Well... Feylin knew not where to begin. Come now, Highness, I heard you explain it back to your father just a few nights ago. Okay, let me think. She squinted in concentration to recall the details, and iterated with a practiced eloquence that gave away her refined rearing. So, the way that I understand it, Dusolia started making more and more guns to replace spears in their army,
My grandpa, King Aslok, was afraid that the guns would make other armies stronger than ours, so he decreed that Roska would withdraw their allegiance to Dusolia if they ever traded guns to other countries and banished guns on Roskin soil. But a lot of people think that breaks the fourth precepts with promises that anybody can have a weapon if they want one, and either way, my dad doesn't want to go against his own dad's decree. She searched her mind for afterthoughts. Did I get everything?
Very well put, Majesty,
Complimented Mr. Tice. Rogan had hardly understood a word of it and remained silent. That's the short of it, all right. Do you have another version, son? You could say I see another side of it. Rogel started in with his experienced opinion. Our knight's armor, he tapped his thick-plated chest, is bulletproof, which helps my peers and I sleep a bit easier. Unfortunately, they can't spare the same for the regulars. The tactics have to change. I mean, why not adapt to the times? The guns aren't going anywhere. I get it. We don't want some new chaos, but if anyone with a finger can kill at 50 yards, you've heard it all before. But that's just where the world's heading, whether we like it or not. His father submitted. That's where the sanctions against Dusolia come in, isn't it? If the lords keep their word and keep those things out of dangerous hands, there's nothing to fear. The lords keep their word, sure, Rogel said cynically. They've already shipped countless guns to Dunuya as civilian trade goods. Who knows where they go from there? Copy crafters, criminals, even the Empire.
And, what is the Empire up to these days?
We don't hear much about him out here, just like His Highness likes it. Word is, they're on a warpath in the Northlands, carving up the Eastern Kingdoms, no idea what for. Another try at reconquest, maybe? Who knows, maybe it'll be our turn again soon. Mr. Tice placed a firm, restrained hand on the table and spoke sincerely. I won't hear you joke about reconquest in my house, son. I don't care if you're a knight. A lot of folks died in the wars. More than ever rightly counted. Sorry, Dad, said Rogel, who knew the matter wasn't worth argument. It's only a rumor, after all. A tense pause followed, and little Rogan broke it to ask, Have you been in any battles, Rogel? Battles? No, nothing like that, Rogue. Stays pretty quiet in the palatial district. I have to arrest a would-be thief once in a while. Real combat, now that's other knights' business. The Kreider Knights, the Orloff Knights, those guys. It gets pretty hairy on the southern coast with all the corsairs. Rogel's answer wasn't nearly as exciting as Rogan wanted. So, Feylin, what's being royalty like anyway? He asked, still eager to pull the conversation along. Well, I have to take lots of private lessons with people of the court. They teach me all kinds of things like trade and history and laws. General Sordis even teaches me about war. That's my favorite subjects because sometimes we play Peril together. He always beats me though. Really? You play war games with that crank? Yes, I've been getting better at it though. Right, Sir Rogel? Well, sort of. You'll get there, Highness. Mr. Tice got up after his last bite of lunch. The meeting is going to return from recess any minute now, and I'd rather like to be there. Boys, Highness, enjoy your afternoon. Have another helping if you'd like. Thank you again, Mr. Tice. It was delicious.
You're too kind, Highness.
Rogan stopped his father in the doorway. Dad, I forgot to mention, the sow's clutch began to hatch this morning. Oh, first things first. I'll check on the hatchlings, then back to the meeting. Thank you, son. Rogan, Sir Rogel, and Princess Feylin roamed the village, and then out to the meadows and millis paddies beyond. They carried on long talks of the varied lives of farmers, knights, and royalty. Later, upon return to the village, Rogan demonstrated his newfound wood-chopping prowess. While Naya neared the end of her daily path through the sky, Feylin petted the Restar hatchlings while the brothers Tice caught up on life's events with one another. The royal carriage and his escort would depart the village after sundown and travel through the night. Indeed, the sun ever lowered, and the day's official business had concluded. King Ozza approached the Tice house to retrieve his dear daughter, and gave thanks to the boy he assigned to her. Rogan bid his brother a fond good night and farewell, and next looked to Feylin for the same. She turned to him and held out her hand, the same way she had that morning. Thank you, Rogan. I had a good time today. Rogan endured the propriety and kissed her ring finger. but then said sincerely, "Good to have a princess for a friend. I hope I see you again. Goodbye," she bid, with a bright smile and golden eyes glinting in the sunset. 6 years later. Rogan arose a full-fledged man by Western law the morning after his 16th birthday. He was ready as he would ever be to say goodbye to Saranold and depart on his rite of passage, a fortune-seeking journey across the kingdom of Roska. From the agrarian hill boroughs to urban Capsule Vale, the valley nestled in the furthest reaches of the Solrathi Peaks. Rogan's birthday saw him gifted with every article he required and mark him a free man. His aunt and uncle gave him a young, muscular riding reptor named Brenner, dark nut brown in color, calm in temperament, and raised from birth just for him. From his cousins came a traveling kit of simple tools, a small stewing pot, kindling, eating utensils, a hand axe, and other things. His father bought him a full set of leather riding gear, gloves, greaves, spalders, caps, stirrups, bridle, and saddle. He was most delighted by the parcel he received from Rogel, delivered all the way from his post in the capital, a well-crafted lance with a 6-foot shaft and steel spearhead. Saranold's magistrate himself presented the local son with perhaps the most useful present of all, a money case filled with 10 lengths of red gold cash, a coinage strung like beads and payable anywhere in the Westlands. While morning light streamed through the window of his bedroom, a chamber which shrank a little with each passing year, Rogan donned first his tunic, belted slacks, and boots, and then for the first time all the pieces of his new riding gear, and the costume filled him with confidence. Out in the cabin's main room, his father greeted him with a last breakfast, heartily prepared. Q eggs, buttered and scrambled with all imaginable Hillborough fare tossed in. No better way to start a great adventure than with a great breakfast. I must say, you almost look like a soldier in all that gear.
You think so?
Said Rogan, striking a pose. Sure feels different. He sat down at the table to be served his last homemade meal.
Now, Rogan,
his father started as he dished his son the scramble.
There's no need to come home anytime soon. The restores will be well taken care of by your uncle and cousins, if not myself. If you find some place you'd like to stay or something you'd like to do out there in the world, you go ahead and do it, and I will understand.
I know, Dad, said Rogan, setting into his breakfast. I haven't given a lot of thought to it yet, though. Maybe it would be best to stick to what I know. His father replied, Don't be so sure. All you know is that you'll never know where the twists in life's road will take you. His belly full, Rogan took his last step out of the family cabin. His father gave him one last gift, full saddlebags of road food. Enough hardtack bread, salted sweet roots, restore jerky, and raw millis to feed his grown son for weeks. You can buy heartier stuff from any inn along the way, of course, but you can't dine like a lord every night, and you want to make that stipend last. Remember, ride north for 6 days. In Aldatown, turn east toward the Solrathi Peaks. You told me, Father. And take the King's Road up from the foothills. It's a toll-free way, so if anyone tries to collect from you, they're swindlers, yes, you mentioned that too. He unhitched Brenner from his post and stood before the first threshold of his adventure. He saw in his father's eyes a bittersweet pride, a sorrow of vicarious delight. If only our mother saw you now, and all along the way. Oh, I'm sure she's watched you from the stars. Oh, my boy. The father and son shared one last long embrace. I'll do something to make you proud, Dad, just like Rogel. You already have, Rogan. Now, don't linger, or I'll never let you go. Rogan mounted his reptor and gave one last farewell to his dear father as the beast began to stride, its 2 legs in tandem with his own. A few neighbors wished him well from their doorsteps as he passed, and some village children followed him as far as the old Lorndor shrine. Silently, he prayed to his mother when her cairn came into view. In return, he felt her somber encouragement. The calm dawn proceeded as Rogan Tice rode northward. Solstice 1650. Rogan's journey was full of newness and event. Swift-striding Brenner carried Rogan about 60 miles a day, a comfortable pace for the young reptor.
Each day brought a fresh stretch of undulating road, new views of fertile farmlands, meadows, and paddies. Each day he rode first from morning to midday, took rest at some roadside stop, then continued on to the next town by sundown. Each night he fed and stabled his raptor and took to shared rooms at local public houses. He made a fool of himself at a tavern just 2 nights into his journey, the first day of the month of solstice. With too much to drink and too little to eat, he found himself on the bad end of an unremembered brawl, and awoke the next morning against a feed trough to Brenner's affectionate licks. With a lesson in temperance, the two carried on their way. On the evening of Solstice 4th, he arrived in Aldertown, a small city amid the many Hillborough villages. From there, he turned eastward, down busier roads toward the spine-bristled horizon. On Solstice 8th, Rogan arrived in Archway, the town at the foot of the Sarathi Peaks. Rogan knew the peaks only from description, illustration, or view from great distances away. Up close, their immensity daunted him when he stood in the shadows of rock-red towers and conical spires thrust skyward. 2 pillars remained of the town's namesake, a Cardian archway that marked the entry to the King's Road, the safest highway through the sheer terrain. With nervousness and resolve renewed alike, Rogan passed between the ruined guideposts and up the gradual incline of the wide, well-trodden road. Those sky-reaching stones defined Roska, and their protective terrain lent the country its nickname, the Bulwark Kingdom. The weather was arid, desert-like, the hot air parched under the summer sun. Frequent shade under the high spires offered relief from the heat, as the road itself often dug into the mountainsides and hugged around their many curves. Raptor-backed travelers like Rogan afforded passage on suspended bridges spanned across the canyons above the deep crags below. Those vertigo heights stole Rogan's breath, not only for the view to a plunge, but for his knowledge that criders teemed in those abyssal cracks, crusty-shelled and 8-legged predators that hived within the very mountains. Roskins both feared and revered the crider, and rarely dared venture down between the mountains, lest they hunt or be hunted. If the King's Road had laid straight due eastward, it would have taken 12 days' travel or less to reach Capital Vale. But the path meandered and contorted in pursuit of a path of least resistance through an untenable landscape. For Rogan and Brenner, 12 days marked a rough quarter of the way through the peaks. Smaller roadways shot off this way and that, to and from tucked-away places, villages, quarries, hollows, even arable valleys and precious crater lakes. Rogan only learned what he heard of such places, for he did not detour from his path to Capital Vale, not even to shortcut his travels. Roadside brush, a snack for Brenner, was common enough, but the rain pools had all dried up. As such, every mountainside village, outpost, or lodge kept tall tanks and rationed their water. For every difficulty the peak folks faced, they contracted some solution. Daily, Rogan passed by huge water wagons, steel-axled and restore-drawn. Pumps were common tools, and their repair was a common trade. On the 27th, the Senalia festival of Solstice Day, Rogan arrived in the town of Crossway, where the westerly strand of the King's Road from the Hillboroughs converged with the southbound strand from Dusolia. He'd managed to remain frugal until then, but for the holiday's sake, he splurged and feasted half a string of cash at a feasting hall, generous to himself and others with drinks and sweet confections. Only once did he brush with danger, when he ran afoul of an aggressing crider. It crept up from the road from his deep nest, in search of carrion. Rogan froze, and failed to speed fearless Brenner to flee. He marveled frightfully at its arrayed eyes, stalked and sunken, the fluid motion of many legs, a rigid red exoskeleton. It probed him with long feelers and let out a screeching chirp. He stared down the calculating creature for long enough to lose track of time and all sense. But then, from down road galloped a Ven Knight, patrolman of Roska's roads. With a confident shout and a brandished lance, the knight commanded the beast to submission, and it scurried off back to the cracks below. Rogan thanked the guardian for his duty, but only hours afterward did the close call occur to him. That Ven Knight's selfless and unhesitant action impressed the young man indelibly, and Rogan never even asked his name.
52 days worth of travel passed since Rogan's departure from Sorenold, which was poor time by normal standards to cross the country, but for Brenner the Reptor's first long haul, not bad. Rogan would never forget the moment he rounded the last bend to Capital Vale. The peaks gave way to a vast valley, like a clearing in a stone forest, and urban sprawl covered it from end to end. Above all, stood 3 huge flat buttes clustered in the middle of the basin. Tall stone walls encircled their surfaces, broad bridges interconnected them, and countless red-shingled roofs crowned them. The kingdom's heart beat from those citadel plateaus, the high city of Sitaponto. The common district lay atop the first of the plateaus, shortest in height, yet so tremendous that Sorenold village would fit upon it 100-fold. The second plateau stood twice as tall but half as wide, whereupon the metropolitan district carved a dense, stone-born skyline. The last plateau was the smallest yet tallest of the 3, the palatial district, where the pyramidal palace and other state houses formed the kingdom's seat of power. Just beyond the vale, Mount Urudar impressed itself on the northeast horizon. A giant fossil of the king of all Criders spanned the mountainside, dormant as stone for centuries, visible from far and wide. Some said he was the corpse of the titan Sauroth himself, so durable that even Naya could not shatter his body like the rest of his ilk in the before time. Nobody knew for sure. The King's Road carried Rogan from the peak-bound highway down and into the broad thoroughfares of the Vale. A northward turn at a crossroad square marked the main causeway up to the districts of Sitaponto. Several lanes separated inbound from outbound movement, and Reptor riders from Restore freighters. The causeway switched back twice to ease the steep incline. It was no dash at the final stretch. Under the gateway, teams of Ven Knights inspected cargo and inquired names. Their efforts dragged the passage down to a crawl. Then Rogan neared the gateway enough to spot a familiar face in the boulevard beyond, standing beside a Rox Knight's paled Reptor.
"Rogel! Hey, Rogel, over here!"
he cried with his spear held high. Rogel smiled when he recognized his grown-up brother, then flashed his crest to the guardsman, who then beckoned Rogan forth. He got down from Brenner and pulled him ahead on a lead past the queue, and ignoring loud complaints of nepotism, the 2 Tice sons reunited in a brotherly embrace. Then Rogan felt a short sword strapped to Rogel's side underneath his green finery. "You didn't have one of those the last time I saw you. Is that a captain's sword? Were you promoted again and never wrote home about it?" "Oh, I wrote home about it all right, just a couple of weeks ago. My division's captain retired and General Sortis thought I'd be best to replace him." "Congratulations, Captain," cheered Rogan with a salute. "Congratulations yourself, on finally becoming a man, I mean. Come on, I know a good place for a drink around here. My treat. I've waited too long to buy you one, Rogue." They mounted and rode together through the streets of the common district, between buildings and businesses of every single sort, tenements and manors, bistros and market stands, thoroughfares and storehouses. Rogel led down an alleyway to a corner tavern, its wooden door engraved with a lively carven crider reeled on its hind legs, with forelegs brandished forth. "Here we are, Fang Maulers. Lovely place," said Rogel, and pushed open the ornate doorway into the establishment. The grime-encrusted windows let little sunlight through. Instead, long rows of slow candles lent the place eerie mood. On a corner stage, house instruments, war drums, a string bass, and a keycord, lay tuned but untouched. The afternoon patronage was sparse and hushed, but a buxom hostess approached them. "Sir Tice, your spot's open. Go on ahead." "Thanks, Marl," said Rogel, and took Rogan to a corner booth. "2 Obrave, 2 Atara." "You got it, boss." In short order, she brought 2 tall mugs. "Well, here's the Obrave. Where's the Atara?" "Already mixed in. Marl knows how I like it." "Right, Marl?" "Yes, sir." "Wait, you mixed the liquor with the ale? Does that even taste any good?" It's a knight's drink, doesn't matter how it tastes. Now, straight down with it. It's a brotherhood. It's a brotherhood, Rogan repeated, and they took up the full mugs, tapped them together and drank. Rogel gulped his down swift and easy, but Rogan struggled on the extra stiffness and coughed suds all over himself. Good Lorna, Rogue. You're not gonna finish that, are you? Rogan swapped for a fresh ale and recounted his month-long journey, and Rogel finished both liquor-laced mugs as he boasted of captain's privileges. Soon, the older brother asked of his junior's future. So what are your plans in the city anyway? Gonna take up an apprenticeship? I know a few connections in the craft houses, armor smiths and such. Not bad lines of work. Actually, Rogan tenderly broached his next words. I've started to think I might like to be a knight. A knight? Like me? No, not like you. Well, okay, I guess like you. You realize you have to join the army first, right? And then serve 5 years with a spotless record? Or worse, prove yourself useful in action. Rogue, there's no need for you to volunteer. Besides, you can go out and find whatever trade you like. I never got that chance. I'm a firstborn son, straight to the military at 16, and I'm lucky to have made good of my service. Plenty of soldiers stay soldiers forever. Did you think about that? Well, no, I hadn't. Don't get me wrong, I won't stop you. Just think about it before giving your life to it, that's all. Several moments passed in silence, which Rogan broke to probe. So, Rogel, since you're a captain of the King's Guard and all, do you think you can take me on a tour of the palace? Rogel almost spat his last sip in a fit. Bro, do you have any idea what kind of a favor that is? Unbelievable, really, unbelievable. He saw Rogan's minor dejection at his response, and changed his tune promptly. Wait till I finish my third drink, then you can talk me into it. A cracked smile revealed that he could not deny his little brother. I was just I'll owe you the realm for it. Yeah, pipe down about it, will ya? First, we'll have to get you some finery. You can't waltz into the palace like that. Not a problem, though. A man needs finery. The brothers finished their drinks, and Rogel left coin on the table to cover it. Next, they quit the joint and stepped up to their reptors again and rode back to the main streets and further into the city. They crossed the nearest of the inclined bridges from the common district up to the second plateau and arrived into the metropolitan district. There stood the brokers' houses where trade itself was traded. Colosseums for sports, theaters for drama, the halls for the 6 knights' orders, industrious craft guilds and academies with vast libraries. Among the clothiers on fashionable streets, they found a fitter of fine men's garb, where Rogan spent a length of cash on a suit of deep blue, an Orloff fur mantle, and exotic harrier-skin shoes. It seemed a bit much to Rogan, but Rogel hedged that it wasn't enough, so he splashed him with scented oil, an acquired fashion the farm boy found quite unmanly. The two mounted again to make for the palatial district. At the mouth of the next bridge was another security checkpoint, this one manned with ardent Rux Knights at attention. Rogel spoke to the man in charge there. Captain Beria, sir. Entry for a fellow captain and 1 guest, please.
Captain Tice, I wasn't expecting to see you on your day off. And who might your guest be? This is Rogan Tice, a man of the Hillboroughs, born Eastern 53rd, 1633. My little brother, actually. I wish to show him my place of work. You're taking family for a tour of the palace? General Sordus won't like the sound of that.
Sir Beerius, I can think of nothing General Sordus would like the sound of.
Right you are about that. Go on, Sir Tice.
The brothers continued on their way. Rogel looked to the guardsmen, faceless under moon-silver helms, and said, "That was me for 3 years." Say, Rogel, do you think I'll get a chance to see Princess Feylin? Don't even start with that, Rogan. You've just stepped foot onto the most restricted ground in Roska, a privilege allowed to very few Roskins, I should add. You better be grateful for this. You're right, Rogel. I didn't mean to sound so... Oh. He trailed off as they arrived at the top of the causeway, and the palatial district in all its splendor came into view. The round and columned senatorial atrium to the left, the battlemented military headquarters to the right, more buildings of high office beyond them. But dominating the space before them, the pyramidal palace, a 6-stepped structure, formerly the Temple of Saroth during the Cardian times, but a complex well worthy of royalty. Florid hanging gardens adorned its edifices, and 5 obelisks crowned its summit. Rogan stood in awe, speechless. Rogan remarked on his little brother's mouth agape. "Yeah, that's how I looked the first time I saw it up close too. Come on, I'll show you inside." The first and outermost step of the pyramid stood disconnected from the structure above it, suspended by many fluted columns, so thick that a dozen men could not encircle them. Within the square, a tremendous gallery space full of art and sculpture. Even more grand columns supported the palace over their heads, where original Solrathi fresco designs still shone vividly from the ceiling. Sunlight streamed into the hall through the open space between the first and second steps, which warmly lit the artifices all around them. They passed by fantastical, detailed oil paintings, framed in red gold and displayed on stone easels, and each depicted moments in Cardian myth and Roscan history, births of titans and wars of men. Rogel offered brief descriptions of each art piece, but the gallery's grandeur so overwhelmed Rogan that he was uncertain whether he walked awake or in a dream. On the far end of the hall, they came to a wide stairwell to the top of the outer step, flanked by 2 marble statues most immense. On the left, King Armorosk I, and on the right, the Lorna Titan Soroth, the 8-limbed lord of mountains standing tall above many Criders, his children. The brothers topped the stairwell to the first step and outermost garden. The tessellated pink and turquoise tiles underfoot, along with potted green trees and flowering bushes, created a rainbow of colors all about. They walked around to the east side, where a second stairwell led up to the second step of the pyramid. Rogel explained as they ascended further, "Now this level is a residence hall, and His Highness is in a meeting on level 3, but the least I can show you is a great view of the city." From the edge of the hanging garden, the pair took in the grand wide vista of Sitaponto and Capital Vale. Patterns of red brick roofs stretched for miles under a cloud-dotted sky. Meanwhile, in the palace audience hall, a spy crept on softened steps through the stone-carved palace halls. The distant echoes of debate rang around, the words indistinguishable at first, until the footpads snuck close enough to eavesdrop on the talks with clarity. The dominant and testy voice of King Azza were the first to come into earshot.
"Our 2 nations' allegiance is at stake. You won't smooth this over with witless excuses."
"Please, King Azza, your highness, the aristocracy has no intent of making an enemy of the Bulwark Kingdom. Not over anything so petty as this," said one of the 2 Dusolian dignitaries, each representing the houses of Celian and Delsai.
"Petty? My spies have word of Dusolian proof marks on the guns of the Parcanian navy, half the realm away. What measures have you against the same falling into Muson hands? Any at all?"
"Your Majesty, Parkanon is a young nation, breaking away from the Emperor just as our 2 nations once did. Surely you sympathize."
"You're misdirecting again, Ambassador. A foreign navy constitutes a military sale."
"I don't misdirect. For such a young navy, their armaments are surely private stock." "And all this conveniently after assassins took Lord Feroda, may he rest. King Azza, what are you implying?" "No more than you infer, gentlemen," said Azza, oblivious to the hidden eavesdropper. She sidled herself tightly against one of the outer columns, motionless. She breathed steadily and silently. She pulled her black hair in tight so not a tendril would be caught in view. The other Dusolian continued, "Forgive me for saying so, Majesty, but the firearm is the future. Surely you realize this? Why else would you bulletproof your knights? Say the word and we can arm and train an entire division on our latest rifles. If only you'd lower your pride and allow a line of credit to—"
"Lower our pride?"
I didn't mean—
"Is there nothing you slitters won't twist into an insulting sales pitch?"
The eavesdropper could no longer retain her composure.
King Oz's outburst inspired a stifled and unwelcome chortle that emanated from behind her column. Ozza could not help a minor chuckle of his own. Pardon my daughter. She is rightfully curious about these proceedings. Feylin! Come on out, I know you're there. Princess Feylin clapped a hand over her mouth. Mortified and frozen still, she glanced around, startled to see none other than General Sordus himself, standing over her with his tense yet tempered glare. I will escort you out, Princess. Sir Rogel, why aren't you enjoying your day off? Your Highness, good to see you. I decided to show my out-of-towner guest the best view in town. I hope you permit. Rogan's perspiration intensified underneath his overly warm finery. He heard that voice before, years ago. An implacable portent came over him, but only for a moment. You know I permit, Sir Tice. I don't care for all those stuffy rules anyway. I'm not a general, you know. Of course not, Highness. Care to introduce me to your friend? Actually, as I recall, the two of you have already met. Rogel pulled Rogan around by the shoulder, and he beheld Princess Feylin for the second time in his life. She had grown in every pleasing way to a young man's eyes. Her night dark curls draped over her sky blue gown, nearly down to her narrow waist. Her amber eyes, rare partners to black hair, flashed in the daylight. She still wore the same silver circlet. Its arc widened over time with daily wear while she matured and learned. She studied him for a moment until recognition took her. Oh, by Naya, I don't believe it. You're Rogan! With a little spring of her legs and a leap of Rogan's heart, she casted her arms around his shoulders and rested her head a moment against his chest. He knew not the courtly, proper way to respond, but he held her round delicately, his hands hovering above her hips. With nervousness, Rogan said, "It's wonderful to see you again, Feylin, Your Highness," as they parted their light embrace. "Oh, wow, it's, wonderful to look at you, too." He regretted the shallow turn of phrase when Feylin glanced away to hide a blush. "There's no need to flatter me, Rogan, or else I'll return it in kind." "Oh, please, flatter away, Your Highness." "Oh, you absolute rogue. Don't you dare make me," she responded, slapping his shoulder playfully. Rogel interjected the cloying reunion. "So, you were just in the meeting with the Dusolian delegation, am I correct, Highness?" "That's not the right way to put it. My father barred me from attendance for whatever reason, but I was sure there was something I could learn from the talk, so I decided to, well, spy on it, alright? But it was all so intense. My father hasn't been happy with the Dusolians at all lately. He thinks the lords have grown corrupt and... Hey, did you know that there's only 2 lords now? Apparently, the third was assassinated last year and no heir was ever named. My father suspects foul play at work. Well, fouler than assassination, that is. But he didn't... Oh, I got off on a tangent, sorry. Anyway, he kept on pressuring them to stop their gun exports, you see, and... I'm sorry, am I boring you with all the political talk? No, not at all. It's actually kind of intriguing, said Rogan as they strolled along the garden way. She spoke on with rapid, youthful excitation. Anyway, the Dusolians took no responsibility for their buyers, but then they tried to come on to my father with some latest model of rifle, and I'm definitely not supposed to repeat any of that to you, so don't you dare repeat it or you might be executed. But I'm getting to the best part. That's when my father gets so loud, and I swear it was the most furious I'd ever heard him, and I quote, "Is there nothing you Dusolian slitters won't twist into an insulting sales pitch?" Oh, they'll need to bomb that burn. Though he got only the gist, her enthusiasm amused him. And General Sordus was so mad. Thank Naya he's not allowed to scold me. I hope I didn't put my father on the back leg in there, though. I'm starting to feel bad about it now. I'm sure it'll all be fine, Highness. King Ozza knows how to handle them. You're right about that. Well, anyway, I really ought to be getting back to my chambers. I told Mrs. Taura I was using the, Well, Sir Tice, Rogan, good day to you both. We'll meet another time, perhaps. Of course, Your Highness. Anytime, Princess Feylin. Just send a royal summons. I'll make the time. He was desperately sincere, but knew naught would come of it. Rogan's eyes followed her swaying hips as she departed, and his mind fluttered off somewhere halfway to heaven. Rogel smacked his brother's skull. Ow! Eyes up, you mongrel. Rogan's mind rushed with labored thoughts while he and his brother egressed from the pyramidal palace and back through the lower districts. Bittersweet had been that day, so full of the city's spectacle, but his brief reunion with Princess Feylin only made him want more. He regretted how little he mustered to say, as if he had a salient remark for such a refined young lady. He cringed at the thought of it, but he couldn't erase the joy of how she embraced him at first sight like a long-missed friend. Funny, Rogan thought, how rarely he'd recall the day they spent together 6 years before, yet from that day forward, she was never far from his mind. She's a very busy young lady, you know, Rogue, but she really does love her subjects, in her own open way, said Rogel to his little brother, cognizant to his misguided heartache. Rogan feigned disinterest and changed the subject. Will you join me for supper tonight? I'm afraid I've made plans. But I bet you could tell any tradesman in the military ward that Captain Seiss sent you, and you could score an apprenticeship in any field you like. Sure, Rogel. I'll do just that. Anyway, until we meet again? Until we meet again. As soon as we can manage it, said Rogel. The brothers saluted and then parted ways. Rogan did not intend to seek out an apprenticeship the next morning. Though he lay silent and exhausted in his rented room, his mind fantasized of future glory beyond rational hope, naive dreams of high adventure and heroic romance. He had met some of those most courageous men of the kingdom, the Knights of Roska, and he wished to be among them. He had seen the beauty of his liege's scion in person, and he wished to serve her. He chose his path with no hope of dissuasion, and so he drafted a letter home. To Argel Tice, Saranald Village, the Southern Hillboroughs. Dear Father, I arrived in Sitaponso today and met Rogel. I'm sure you heard the news of his promotion to captain. He took me for a tour in the royal palace, and you'll never believe who we ran into. Princess Feylin. Rogel assured me she remembers the day she spent with her family fondly. I'm writing to tell you that tomorrow I plan to enlist into the army. With my own reptor and spear, and with my brother's good word, I'm sure to be accepted. If I serve for 5 years without strikes, I will qualify to be knighted into one of the 6 orders, just like Rogel. I will devote myself to this goal. Hoping you, the restors, and all our neighbors are in good health and spirits. With love, your son, Rogan. Meanwhile, back at the palace. In the Crown Princess's bedchamber, Feylin laid in her reading nook and perused a tome on the history of Roska-Dusolian relations. As the hour grew late, her 4-post canopy bed lay welcome and warm, but as yet she had not even dressed down to her nightgown. She read attentively by the light of her own fireplace and stoked the blaze frequently. The light narrowed her off-scattered attention toward her studies. King Ozza entered his daughter's chamber without a knock, and the surprise of his appearance rocked her attention. She knew why he came, and immediately she prostrated into an apology. Father, I am so sorry I snuck into that meeting. You see, I was just so curious about what was going on, and I couldn't resist. Save your contrition for another time, my princess. I do not seek it. In fact, I forgive you before all else. Oh. Okay, so I'm not in trouble? No. But you would do well to remember the lesson of the anvil of Noah Kawir. You see, it's this anvil their chieftain dangles from a rope over his throne as a reminder of his burden. Now, I don't think he actually sits there, though. It sounds dreadfully unsafe. Ozza's hands rested on his daughter's shoulders in affirmation. Anyway, Faye, there's nothing wrong with a little espionage every now and again, but we have the Department of Spycraft for that. But Dad, I was wondering, what did they mean about a line of credit? Another time, Ozza answered with a sigh. They are a nation of gadgets and gold, ours one of honor and duty. Not exactly the makings of a stalwart friendship. But don't tempt me to lecture. You need your rest. Come on now, get to bed. You're right. I'm quite exhausted. Good night, Dad. Feylin wished him, with a hug around his waist from where she sat beside him. Good night, Feylin. No more fire. Wash up and get straight to sleep, he added as he exited the bedchamber. Of course, Dad. Love you, said Feylin, as her father left and shut the doors behind him. Next, Feylin partially obeyed her father's wishes. She stripped down, without a handmaiden's aid as per her preference, quickly washed the day from her skin at her wash basin, and put on her silken sleeping gown. Then, as a matter of course, she threw a few pieces of wood onto her fireplace to renew the blaze, and continued, to read and read unto the approaching midnight, in pursuit of clues. Roska's vast military institution boasted a most arduous 6-month training regimen, each month spent in the tutelage of each of the 6 orders of the Knights of Roska. First, the honor guards of the Rux Knights imposed the basic training, marching instruction, physical conditioning, and book study of military protocol. The process weeded out the weak, unready, and unsound. Many recruits drop out or are found wanting. In the second month, the Homeland Patrolmen of the Ven Knights trained non-lethal takedowns by day and practical law by evening. The next month, the Border Guards of the Var Knights took the recruits under wing in the ways of surveillance, reconnaissance, and archery. The Orloff Knights, weapon masters, furthered the trainees' combat arts, the ways of the spear, the axe, the sword, and more. During the 5th month, recruits took to mounts with the Reptor Knight Cavalry. Their training exercise routed throughout the inner regions of the Sorathi Peaks, from Capital Vale to Arma's Stronghold, the Cold Sea Cliffs to the town of Crossway, and back again. The Kreider Knights, tactical specialists, oversaw the 6th and final month of training. That final period tied together all the protocol and fighting and riding together to complete an understanding of what it meant to be a soldier of Roska. Upon completion, new men ascended to the echelon of responsibility for king and country. Rogan Tice, who had proved apt to riding, was assigned to the 16th Mounted Division, an auxiliary mobile unit subjunctive to the Var Knights' 29th Eastern Company, the Border Patrol in other words. The men of the 16th frequently carried out drills or exercises to keep their skills sharp, but infrequently engaged in enforcement actions. By 1652, vague rumors spread throughout the army of suspicious Muson activity, the exact nature of which the High Command would not confirm. Nevertheless, the 16th Mounted Division were reassigned to garrison the smaller watchtowers along Solroth's Ridge. That's how Rogan found himself at humble Fort Ornar, where he remained for over a year, until a turn in course for Roskan history. Fort Ornar stood upon a cliffside summit right on the edge of the ridge. It was little more than a walled enclosure, and within a multi-storied watchtower, a barracks hall for its garrison of 20 men, and a stable for their reptors. For being only a day's swift ride from Capital Vale, the posting felt impossibly remote. The tower stood at the end of a single rugged road that led nowhere else. There were no passers-by, only thrice-monthly deliveries of food, supplies, and postage. There was little to do to pass the time, but the fort's commander, a Var Knight named Lieutenant Redrick, allowed his men much leeway in their idle pursuits and absurd games invented in boredom's madness. The tower battlements overlooked a clear view to the east, the sole reason Fort Ornar and many like it existed. The Westlanders' ancestral enemy, the Muson Empire. Their westerly territories, the plains of Quelas, lay at the bottom of a sheer cliff drop and stretched out to the far horizon. The garrison rarely spotted imperial activity, military or otherwise. Often there were roaming herds of Rin beasts on the grasses and rolling hills. Sometimes hunting parties of Feylin peasants stalked and stampeded the beasts, but there was never any sign of soldiers. Still, the Roskan men at Fort Ornar kept to their standing orders, diligent in spite of the dullness. There upon the battlements, Rogan reread a letter from his brother that harkened an eventful day to come, with key details omitted for secrecy's sake. Rogue, hope you're well. Not much time to write, making preparations for a tour at her behest. We'll be traveling first to Fort Highwall, and then a leisure trip along the ridge. We'll be due to reach Ornar on the 22nd of this month. Thought you'd like to know, Mr. Suitor. Your brother.
Suddenly, someone snatched the letter from his hands.
What do we have here? Writing to someone?
Knock it off, Kine. It's the same letter you got last week. The nosy Kine dropped the letter at Rogan's feet. Another fellow, Aval, picked it up for him. Are you still going through our post? I can't help it. I worry about you guys and all those secrets you keep from me. Sure you are. Who wouldn't want to confess to you? Lieutenant Redrick approached them from along the wall, clad in full plate. I don't see much shaping up over here, girls. Snap to it. I want everything squared away and in protocol. That means helms on, all of you. Ah, come on, Lou. You look stupid in those lousy domes. You look stupid without them, too. I swear I'm too easy on you guys.
I thought we liked things easy around here.
Not today we don't. Now step 2. And helms, commanded the knight, and he marched off to siege the rest of his men. Ugh, bloody helmets. The 3 soldiers returned to their quarters to square away their appearances. They tucked their hems into spit-shine boots. Over knee-length gambesons, they strapped on their tough Restor leathers, falds, breastplates, and pauldrons, all oiled to a dull matte sheen. To cap the uniform, the much-maligned helms, little more than padded cowls, nothing like a knight's handsome visor. A call-out came from atop the gateway.
Riders, approaching from the northbound road. Autumn and Legee, back from patrol? Nah, 10 riders.
Looks like the Rox Knights. Sir Redrick ascended the ladder to the wall and took up his spyglass. Ah, great blaze, it's them. And they're coming fast. He commanded loud and clear. No time to finish tidying. Look alive. Line up on the double. Sartek, Kine, open the gate. The men of Redrick's command lined up in 2 rows before the wide, expecting gateway as the galloping Rox Knights drew closer. The question occurred to the soldiers. Why so swift? Something was wrong. The 10 mounted knights barged through the gateway, silver armor shining, visors down, and amid them there she was. Rogan recognized her riding side saddle in tandem with the captain of the band. The rider helped her off before dismounting himself and lifted his visor. Rogel! He spoke. Who's in command here? You're the lieutenant, yes? Yes, sir. Lieutenant Redrick. Captain Tice, shut the gate. Barricade it if you can. Yes, sir. Kine, Sartek, get after it. Sir, what's the matter? There's a Yoxanese war band short on our tail. They outnumber us all some 3 to 1, and their commander is a Gigan. A Gigan? A Yoxanese band? The day clearly had taken a turn Sir Redrick had not expected. Yoxanese by outfit, surely Muslim by command. Of course. Alright. Step 2, men. We're under attack. Ready yourselves. Aval, help them bar the gate. Archers, form a shooting line atop the wall. Spearmen, behind the gate. Move! Move! We've trained for this. Today you all earn knight's crests. It wasn't Redrick's first moment of action. He kept a semblance of assuredness as he issued his commands, and men of Fort Ornor scrambled to carry them out. Rogan? Rogan, tell me you're here. I'm here, Rogel. Oh, thank Naya. I was afraid you were one of the patrolmen we found along the road. Onum and Legee. Their bodies were used as ambush bait. They're Solrothi knights now. Solrothi knights. The honorific bestowed on Roskan regulars killed in action. Their names would be etched on the walls of Sitaponto to protect its people forever. Damn imp slaughtered the rest of the girls and 5 of my men. Princess? Feylin stood in the middle of the ordered chaos as the soldiers prepared their defenses. She looked bewildered, hands clasped over a quaking heart within her breast. Her night dark hair a tossed mess under her silver circlet. Even her gold amber eyes had dulled, deadened. Princess, you remember my brother Rogan, yes? Rogan. Yeah. Ah. Tears welled in her eyes as she collapsed onto the ground, further dirtying her gown. I'm sorry, Highness, there's no time. Rogan, get her inside the watchtower now, and bar the door, hurry! Then get back out here and don't leave my side. Yes, sir. He approached Feylin, unsure at first how to move her from her despair. Your Highness, please, Feylin. It's me. You do remember me, right? Rogan? Oh, I had looked forward to seeing you today. Oh, what's happening? It's okay, Feylin. There'll be another time. But look, this fort yard is going to be a battlefield, and who knows how soon. You have to get inside. It'll be safer. Yes. Inside. Safe. I have a duty to stay safe. Rogan held her hand and guided her into the base room of the watchtower. You'll seem alone in here, but just remember, we're all outside, ready to keep your company as soon as this all blows over. I'm gonna shut the door. You have to bar the latch behind me. Yes, sir, she said, and surprised Rogan with a salute. I'll see you soon. I promise. She nodded her head, with fear and hope mixed together in her tearful amber eyes. Rogan shuddered within, safeguarded as she could be in a hopeless scenario. He turned his attention to the scene in the fort yard. There was quiet, but no calm. By the stables, the Rox Knights' reptors milled about, left unhitched in their master's haste.
Knights and soldiers arrayed shoulder to shoulder behind the barricaded gate, spears prepared to thrust. Longbowmen and crossbowmen lined along the top of the wall, arrows nocked to shoot. Lieutenant Redrick and Captain Tice awaited the sign to issue their next commands. Per his brother's word, Rogan rushed up the wall-side ladder to stand at his side. Over the battlements, he saw them. A raid party from the Yoxanese steppes, darkly armored and 2 apiece upon some 40-odd lopers. The beastly mounts growled with furs bristled on end, clawed paws and fanged maws bared. Half the raiders brandished swords, lances, and the like. The rest carried muskets, long-barreled and loaded. The 4 of their column rode a tremendous man, alone upon his muscular loper, surely the Geigen commander Rogel had mentioned. Shrunken skulls and ancient curses adorned his blackened steel armor. His face was whitened with ash, and many rings pierced his cartilages. All his grim decorum warned of his deadliness. He addressed the Roskan commanders, his spoken volume as loud as a shout.
I am War Chief Zenkadi, and I speak for Emperor Ixis. Have you my quarry cloistered?
I am Captain Tice, and I speak for King Azza. You will never take her without a fight.
Fool.
He issued an order in Mussanese to 4 of his men, who each launched metal spheres through spring-loaded tubes. They hissed as they flew through the air right over the wall and thudded in a grouping in the middle of the yard. The nosy soldier Kine broke rank to investigate them.
What the hell are these?
But Sir Redrick knew. Grenades! Take cover! His men dove aground, but Kine took heed too late. Like thunder, the blast deafened, and dust clouds blinded. In an instant, flying shrapnel ripped through unlucky men. Kine blew apart. The first killed outright. His legs tore off, his torso peeled open, bits of him landed all over. A bloody helm, the last of it. Some bled from grazes. Some collapsed from shards lodged in their limbs, but the knights stood unharmed, their armor effective as designed. Rogan remained unscathed, but his whole body recoiled and trembled. Shock and terror gripped hold within the fort. The 9-foot-tall Zenkadi dismounted and took up his broad-headed battle axe, dense and destructive. One wide, winding swing was all he needed. The gateway splintered wide open with such force. The soldier's Sartek, struck in the head by fast-flying debris, died mercifully of a snap's neck. Zenkadi lowered his head as he entered the archway into the fort. Many raiders followed in behind their commander. Those men that still had the strength to stand and the wits to face their enemies were frozen, terrified. Sir Redrick ordered, "Arrows, now!" The archers struggled to recover from the instance of attack, and shot aimless. Few found their marks, and either glanced off enemy armor or hit nothing but air and dirt. "Rock's Knights, as one, attack!" The knights in his command mustered courage and rushed forth into the approaching horde. With one axe swing, the Geigen Zenkadi brushed 2 knights aside like bugs. Their thick armor crinkled where impacted, causing grave injury within. The first wave of foes, pikemen, distanced the defenders, and over their shoulders musket barrels rested, taking aim. A shot volley rattled like thunder. Musket balls zipped about at random, ricocheted off knights' armor and burrowed through the soldiers beside them. One ball sailed into Aval's clenched teeth. Shattered in an instant, his jaw disintegrated. There was never a hope of victory, nor ever a thought to surrender. Half the Roskan defenders, in the matter of a minute, were killed or deathly wounded. The knights lasted longest, but numbers overwhelmed them one by one. Spooked reptors ran rampant, tail-whipped friend and foe alike, serving nothing. Lieutenant Redrick drew his sword and jumped from the wall, his blade aimed for Zenkadi's unhelmed shaven skull. The Geigen pivoted, and Redrick, his mark missed, landed in a heap at the enemy's feet. Zenkadi pinned him under boot, raised his axe, and swung it down like a windmill blade. Redrick's helmeted head flew off and rolled away. Rogel grabbed Rogan roughly, and he saw his big brother's mouth move, but heard only a deafened ring through the faint clashing and howls. Rogel repeated himself louder. "Is there a back way out?" "Through the stables. We got a back road hidden in the brush." Rogel heard half of Rogan's words, but understood at least the affirmative. "Take Brenner, I'll cover your escape. Come on!" With his lance in one hand and his drawn sword in the other, Rogel led his little brother around the walls to the far side of the enclosure, where they descended a small stairway. An enemy saw their movement and advanced upon them, a bludgeon brandished. Sir Rogel attempted to run him through.
but the fiend parried his lance thrust and laid in towards the softer target, Rogan. The enemy raised his mace. Rogan flinched and raised his arms. The blunt strike landed on his right forearm with a gruesome snap. Agony rocked Rogan from his arm through his core, and he shrieked louder than ever in all his life. When he managed to open his eyes, he saw his attacker cut down dead by Rogel. Go, Rogue, you gotta survive. Get your ride, I'll hold them off. You must inform the High Command what's happened here. Rogel, you can come with me. There are plenty of raptors. My place is here. I'm sworn to protect her. But Rogel! Captain's order, get the hell out of here! Rogan obeyed his brother and commander, even as two more foes essayed him. Within the stable, Rogan's approach brought some small measure of ease to a panicked Brenner. Come on, old boy. We're leaving. He holstered his spear into the saddle. With his free left arm, he unlatched the back door, as his right hung limp, misshapen, and useless. He managed to untie Brenner's hitch and mount him, and with his feet set into his stirrups, the Raptor's legs and his own were as one. They bolted away. With every gallop, his arm throbbed, but Rogan could not spare attention to it. Upon Brenner, he rounded Fort Ornar by the narrow back road toward the front, and the Raptor leapt through the brush onto the main road, clear from view. He fled, as ordered, away from the din of the battle. He did not look back, except in his mind's eye. He could still see his brother fight off many foes for his escape. And Feylin, oh Feylin! Such fear and hope mixed on her face. He still had a promise to keep to her.